Good evening. I hate to interrupt such a congenial group. I'm Linda Freed. I have the deep honor of serving as the dean here at Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health. And tonight, the equally deep honor to welcome all of you as we come together to commemorate, recognize, cheer, and inspire the future for the groundbreaking visionary work of the Columbia Children's Center for Environmental Health. I am so proud to be part of this, and I know from talking to so many people here tonight that you share my pride in what has been accomplished and what we know will be accomplished for all of our benefit. Tonight you'll hear from Columbia Center for Children's and Environmental Health visionary leader, Ricky Pereira, Dr. Ricky Pereira. You'll hear from Associate Professor Dr. Julie Herbstman, and we will honor CCCEH's truly valued partners, Wendy Kelman-New, Luz Towns-Miranda, and Brian Lehrer. Since the Environmental Protection Agency and the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences program to jointly fund children's environmental health centers started in 1988, CCCEH, I'm having trouble pronouncing this, but I know what it is, has been one of only 2 continuously funded centers in the United States. Over the last 20 years, the center's research has provided the scientific basis for environmental policies that protect the most vulnerable. They have built on the pioneering, visionary, and really brilliant molecular epidemiology work created by Dr. Pereira and her colleagues, an approach that looks for clues about the causes of disease within cells and then can link those to the potential exposures in our environment that may be causing that disease within cells. And then links it to the communities that are experiencing those exposures and whose children are at risk from them. What more powerful combination can there be of science for the public good and for our collective future? Dr. Pereira herself, even before the full center that came to bloom, has been a scientific visionary and pathfinder as well as path creator. She started as a cancer researcher. I have a feeling we may hear later what made her leap into the vision that she saw and created for the work that we're celebrating tonight. But she not only has been the leader who created this amazing center and its profound impact, but actually created the whole field of molecular epidemiology, which now is a foundation for scientists all over this country and around the world. And she has built partnerships that made the science deeply matter for people's lives. I can say that I was talking to Peggy Shepard before, and when I came here as dean a little over 10 years ago, I think the first event I was invited to was WEAC's honoring of Ricky Pereira for then already many years of sustained partnership in bringing the issues of the community into science and science to serve the community. The center is built on this pioneering molecular epidemiologic science, and it is unique in the wide spectrum of environmental risks and exposures and outcomes they study, from asthma to neurodevelopment, to children's IQs, to obesity, to cancer risk, and many other critical issues of exposures that set children up either for risk and future ill health or for health itself. They always consider the social context in their work, with a focus on urban minority populations who have been traditionally underrepresented in scientific studies and are the most vulnerable and most underserved in terms of protection. I personally couldn't be more proud to be a member of this community with all of you and to be here tonight to recognize the work that Ricky started, the work that all of the collaborators and investigators who are here tonight have come together over 20 years to bring to fruition, and we'll be hearing from many of them. And I think it's a special moment to reflect on the tremendous impact that they have made on improving the health and well-being of children in all of our communities. Now I'd like to welcome Dr. Andrea Baccarelli to the podium to tell us more about Columbia Children's Center for Environmental Health and to introduce other speakers for this evening. I'm proud to say that Dr. Baccarelli is the chair of our Department of Environmental Health Sciences, as well as himself being the director of the Laboratory of Precision Environmental Bioscientists. He's an epigeneticist and a board-certified clinical endocrinologist, and he currently is the leader, the principal investigator of multiple National Institutes of Health funded projects. His research explores potential pathways, very in concert with CCCEH, that link environmental pollutants and their exposures to, and how they affect human beings to human disease. Andrea.
So, I'm here to welcome all of you to this wonderful celebration. It's an honor and a source of gratitude to see this progress so far in these 20 years and see all of you, old friends and new friends. But I'm here particularly to tell you a story. It's a story that starts in 1999. And we will hear more about the center. But at the same time, I was a clinical resident. I was working in endocrinology at the University of Milan. And I was having an important conversation with my mentor in his office at the University of Milan, 5,000 miles from here. And I was a younger person, and I was as confused as one can be about what to do in the future, finishing my fellowship. And we were brainstorming about the things I could do. And at the time I was in the clinic, I was appreciating what my mentor was doing in environmental health, but not much into environmental health yet. At some point, my mentor, Professor Bertazzi, disappears behind his desk, and he goes down like I'll do in this moment. And he produces a book. And he says, Andrea, this is what the smartest thing you can do in your life. It's a book by Dr. Schulte and Professor Frederica Pereira, Molecular Epidemiology. And he said, if you want to do something that really matters, why don't you go get trained in this? And there are moments in your life that change what you do, and that was changed. That was having this book landing on my mentor's desk that day and having this conversation right after he read this book. And he said, I think this is the most important book I've read in the past 10 years. It's something that's going to change the world we live in, and it did. And so I'll tell you more about that because, first of all, what is really important is that it influenced my life, but I mean, that's my thing, not yours. But what is more interesting is that it influenced so many people's life, both here at Columbia, but especially across the world. And one thing you might not know is that while in my mind, Ricky has always been doing work on children and their mothers, at some point she was working only on their mothers and working on breast cancer. And what this book is about finding early markers that you can get someone blood, a little drop of blood, and find out whether they have been exposed to life experiences that change the risk of disease. In particular, at that time, she was working on breast cancer. And she found a very smart method to get someone's blood and find out whether they have been already exposed to very nasty chemicals, in particularly carcinogens, chemicals that cause cancer. So she was about to use this method, and she thought, oh, I want to try this on someone who certainly doesn't have this. And she thought about children who were just born. So she went to the delivery room and asked people to give her blood, And to her surprise and dismay, she found that indeed these children were not clean as we thought. It was among the first to find out that even a baby who's just born, because of being exposed in the place we think safest, their mother's womb, they already have traces of chemicals that cause cancer in their bodies and in their blood. But not only this is amazing, it's that what's really amazing to me is that Ricky decided to change her path and think that this was so important that she wanted to protect these children and their mothers. And because of that, she started a career that today we celebrate with 20 plus years, where she has done the most influential work in showing that children are exposed to these chemicals and showing that especially there are ways to protect them, there's ways to change their life. Not only that, but this has been an influence much larger than her work herself, because today we talk a lot about precision medicine, about omics, genomics, epigenomics. And what was written in this book is still the framework of what not only we do in my lab, thank you, but especially, I mean, it has been really important, but especially there are whole departments and even whole schools that are doing this type of work today. And this is something that brings forward biomedical research all over the world. But the best way for you to appreciate this is for me to call up Dr. Pereira and have her herself tell us about her life and her work. And please help me to welcome and give Dr. Pereira the warmest and strongest applause.
Thank you very much, Linda and Andrea, for your incredible support. Those are and very kind remarks. And in a moment, in a little while, I'm going to tell you something about Dr. Julie Herbstman, who is a molecular epidemiologist par excellence. Now, I first want to thank 4 people who put in a lot of effort to make this event so wonderful. Teresa Durham, where she is, Lisari Marizan, Kylie Wheelock, Riley, and who am I missing? Kim Burke. They've all done a wonderful job. Now, Andrea mentioned my personal tipping point into research on prenatal exposure, and it was a wake-up call to see in what I thought were pristine control samples for studies of adult cancer that there were these marks, these fingerprints of carcinogens bound to DNA in newborns. And that was shocking. And that tipped me, encouraged me with my colleagues to go forward, or maybe you would say back into the womb to find out more, to learn more about what the risks were from these prenatal in utero exposures. At that time, our goal was to reduce the burden of disease and impairment in children in our inner city community. The rates of asthma and other diseases were very high, among the highest in the country. 30% of children had asthma, 25% were obese, and 30% had some developmental delay, and many of them would go on to have a cognitive or behavioral impairment that could affect their ability to learn. And over the years, we found evidence, often for the first time, that prenatal environmental exposures to air pollutants, pesticides, flame retardants, chemicals in plastics, were contributing to these diseases and disorders, providing critical scientific support for regulation. And I'm going to show you a video if you'll stay with us. I think that will be turned right on now. Here in northern Manhattan, in the communities that we serve as part of the medical center, we're conducting a study of women who were enrolled in pregnancy.
Dr. Frederica Pereira is 12 years into a landmark study at Columbia University Center for Children's Environmental Health. Following hundreds of pregnant women, as they navigate these city streets, measuring their exposure to toxic substances, vehicle emissions, pesticides, secondhand smoke.
In addition to the air monitoring, personal air monitoring, monitoring is done in the homes.
The placenta isn't the perfect barrier scientists once thought. An ongoing study of more than 600 children living in Upper Manhattan details the damaging impact pollution can have on a child's developing brain. Now, researchers at Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health have been able to actually document with MRIs the damage to the brain. As city officials focus in on early childhood development, the environment should be part of the discussion, especially for those in low-income areas who tend to be at highest exposure with the least resources to fight it.
Children in New York City are exposed to an urban soup of airborne chemicals. Some neighborhoods in Upper Manhattan suffer more than others. The clues show up in the umbilical cord blood. The blood is spun into separate components in a centrifuge. That's what they call the stuff of life.
That's
right?
the stuff of life. That's
All
the stuff
the inflammation is in there.
Toxic chemical exposure can have multiple effects on children's health. That means lower IQ scores, more behavioral problems like ADHD, even autism, obesity in childhood, also asthma, and possibly cancer. We have documented so many different exposures to flame retardants, to phthalates, bisphenol A, air pollutants, organophosphate pesticides, chemicals that shouldn't be in the bodies of newborn children, and yet they are.
Dr. Robin White studies the mother's exposure to pesticides.
So we've been monitoring for 8 different pesticides, and all of those women are exposed to at least 3 pesticides.
I think in reality there is no safe level. It depends upon the level of risk that we tolerate as a society, but to damage even to the extent of several IQ points or some very tiny attentional issues, in my mind, is not acceptable if we know that it is associated with an exposure.
There's an association between bisphenol A exposure, BPA exposure, in 3rd trimester of pregnancy and later life measures of obesity at age 7.
Childhood obesity is a national problem, but it's hitting the neighborhoods that we work in somewhat harder than other neighborhoods in America.
One of the new studies that we're doing at the Columbia Center for Children's Environmental Health is to look at the way an individual person can reasonably reduce their exposure to flame retardants in their homes.
Infants and children typically have higher levels of exposure than adults, and this is concerning, as we've heard from Dr. Landrigan, that children and developing fetuses, neonates, they're especially vulnerable to environmental chemicals.
What can research in a community like this do that science alone in a lab can't do?
It's organizations and community residents who, if working with them, can take that data and advocate and take action.
In addition to all the other things we need to do to nurture young children, make them ready for school and good learners, we really must start early on to prevent toxic environmental exposures. Well, the video says a lot, certainly more than 1,000 words, that's for sure. But there's much more to tell you because being good environmentalists, we recycled existing video material by, and I hope we don't get sued, Brian Lehrer has assured me we won't, by Sanjay Gupta and by Bill Moyers and others, and therefore some updates are needed. So it's not 12 years of follow-up of that cohort now, it's 20. It's 700, over 700 mothers and 700 newborns enrolled. in that first cohort, and now 3 additional cohorts are being followed right here in New York City, including one launched just after 9/11. But there's much more by way of accomplishments, so I'll just give you some bullets here. There is the groundbreaking research on asthma and allergy by Rachel Miller and Matthew Perzanowski, research by Mary Beth Terry on the earliest environmental determinants of breast cancer, Virginia Rao's study of the prenatal exposure to pesticides and the seeding of Parkinson's disease, Andrew Rundle's finding that air pollution exposure to the pregnant mother was a risk factor for obesity in their children. The research in China led by Deliang Tang, showing molecular and clinical benefits of closure of coal-burning facilities. Studies in Krakow, Poland, that have paralleled the New York City and the China studies validating those findings. Research to pin down the mechanisms by which chemicals act to cause their harm in order to identify molecular targets for intervention. That is, after all, our goal, to intervene and prevent. And the Center's Healthy Home, Healthy Child campaign in partnership with West Harlem Environmental Action, our lead partner in the community, and other organizations, that has reached thousands of parents and caregivers to help them reduce toxic exposures in the home. Our research has also shown that stressors due to poverty increase the harm to children's developing brains from environmental exposures, underscoring the need for holistic social and environmental justice. And finally, we've documented the special vulnerability of the young to air pollution and climate change from fossil fuel burning, and the significant benefits to their health and future from a shift to clean, sustainable energy. No time to tell you more, but you may read about it on our website and in our hundreds of publications. So now, I want to say thank you to all my amazing colleagues, many of them are here, faculty, investigators, advisors, research workers, community partners, who've so generously given their talent, their time, their energy to the center's work. And grateful thanks to our federal funders, to NIEHS and EPA, to private foundations, and individuals who've provided generous and invaluable support. So I am excited to see the center go forward under Julie Herbstman's leadership. I'm also excited to launch a new program within the center entitled Translational Research to expedite the passage of scientific data into policymaking to protect children, our most vulnerable children, from toxic chemicals and climate change. Now, I would like to ask Peggy Shepard, who is the director and co-founder of West Harlem Environmental Action, or WEACT, our lead community partner, to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Ricky. You know, it's been a wonderful 20 years. I remember when I got a call from Ricky, and she was thinking about developing a proposal for these children's centers. And we began working on that proposal, and we were part of drafting what the community outreach and translational core should really look like. And so our role for the past 20 years has been to translate that research into policy, whether it's been policy at the City Council on pesticide notification, whether at the state legislature, it's been around BPA, flame retardants, and also helping to transform the entire MTA bus fleet to hybrids because of the air quality research and data that we were able to get from the center. So it has been a perfect nexus of research with community concerns, because the community reached out to us and said, what are we experiencing with all of the pollution that we have, whether it's from buses, sewage treatment plants? And we were we're able to reach out to research centers here at Columbia as well as the NIEHS Center here and be able to answer those questions. Not only answer those questions, but share information and for researchers to also hear from the community what their key concerns were. So it's been a wonderful 20 years. I'm sure it is not over, and I'm sure working with Julie Herbstman will be an honor and another opportunity, as it has been working with all of the wonderful researchers here at the center. And I want to call out Dave Evans, who is our liaison and co-director of the Community Outreach and Translational Corps, and has been a wonderful supporter with us for those 20 years. So thank you, Ricky. It's been a wonderful, wonderful ride.
Well, my goodness, Peggy, it has been a wonderful ride. It's going to continue. I'd like to invite Julie Herbstman to join me here. Yes, so your ear. Her ears are going to burn, and she doesn't like praise, do you? No. Julie arrived in 2006 as a postdoctoral fellow to join me and the center. She came loaded with advanced degrees. She had a degree in environmental sciences, a degree in epidemiology, and she had considerable research experience already. Now she's an associate professor with tenure. And you saw and heard in the video about her groundbreaking research on flame retardants that motivated the Consumer Product Safety Commission to propose a standard to regulate the broad class of flame retardant chemicals, not just one at a time. After arriving at the center, Julie pitched right in and launched a study of the younger siblings of the children in our first cohort. And then she started another cohort called Fair Start, which is now enrolling newly pregnant women and their children and following them. Now, in addition to her success in securing many research grants and her notable skill at problem solving, she's famous for that, Julie is a scuba diver and a snowboarder. However, these activities, she tells me, have been somewhat curtailed since the birth of their daughter, who is now 5 years of age, Leah, who looks exactly like her mother. Julie has been a joy to work with. In addition to her outstanding scholarship, Julie is kind, she's smart, wise, and as you will hear shortly, visionary. I'm confident that under her leadership, we at the center will continue to work together to tackle tough issues and do the rigorous science necessary to effect big change.
Thank
there,
you.
Julie. Wendy knew. Yes. Wendy knew. You can stay there and I can blast this, or you can come up. What would you like to do? Why don't you come up so people can see you? She doesn't like praise either. Well, Wendy New is one of those rare people who combines deep intelligence with modesty and compassion for those who are less fortunate. Wendy, along with her husband, John, until his death in 2013, has been a long-term and generous supporter of the Columbia Center for Children's Environmental Health. Wendy is a leading social and environmental entrepreneur. She is chair and chief executive officer of Hugo New Corporation. It's a privately owned company that builds, operates, and invests in innovative real estate and environmental resiliency. She's been a pioneer in building businesses that are both environmentally and fiscally sound, fostering innovation in environmental technology and ecologically sustainable practices. Through an exciting current real estate venture, Wendy's knocking down the barriers to entry by small and minority-owned businesses through the transformation of a former 130-acre shipbuilding facility into a vibrant cutting-edge business district. Wow. Wendy's been a leader in the recycling industry as a whole, and she was instrumental in returning curbside recycling of plastics, metal, and glass to the city of New York. We were so grateful for that. That program was ended for a while, and we were devastated. Wendy's also a leading environmental, animal, and social justice activist. She's been honored by Animal Haven for her animal rescue and humanitarian efforts in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, and was recently honored for her work in criminal justice reform by the organization Getting Out and Staying Out, GOSO. She's been honored by the New York League of Conservation Voters and Earth Day 2006. Wendy's a trustee of the Natural Resources Defense Council and a director of the Brennan Center for Justice at New York University School of Law. Now, you may not know this, you probably don't, but I'll tell you, Wendy started out her professional career, is this okay? As a social worker for Trenton State Prison and the Yardville Correctional Facility, where she developed and implemented inmate counseling and work release programs. She's a graduate of American University and holds a JD degree from Cardozo School of Law. Wendy is a valued friend, one who walks her talk, and her actions speak louder than words. On behalf of all of us at CCCEH, please accept this award in recognition of your service to children.
Wow. So what is someone like me doing in front of such a audience? First of all, Ricky, I wish I'd met you when I was much younger, because I perhaps would have done much better in math and science as opposed to liberal arts and ending up working in a prison, much to my parents' dismay. But Ricky, you and Fritz, and there are so many others in this audience, Francis and Sarah, Peggy, actually, we go quite a ways back, are really responsible for my being here in many ways and have shaped who I am today. But Ricky, you're a force of nature, and we say that occasionally at NRDC and Natural Resources Defense Council, but you truly are, and you and Fritz, frankly, have changed my life and changed my late husband's life as well, and we are honored to be part of your circle of friends and to be friends with you. I really try and have tried to devote my life, my personal and professional life, to social justice, environmental justice, and animal rights. I see them all as being connected. And this center, in many ways, embodies much of that passion. Over the years, it has become clear to me that as a people and as a planet, we are indeed an ecosystem, a complex, interconnected, interdependent system, but also an ecosystem. We are only, as an ecosystem, we are only as strong as our most vulnerable, our children. And I would add as well other species. The term do no harm in medical ethics is the physician's guiding principle, the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm, meaning to do good, provide benefits to people and contribute to their welfare. Heal, don't hurt. Today, due to the center's work, do no harm has evolved into a great many things related to the moral pillars of life: respect, justice, and beneficence. notably with increased emphasis upon the environment upon which we all depend and which protects all life. The interests of the unborn and the marginalized can only be defended by applying concepts of equity and justice, driven and based upon sound science. This is increasingly important as we adapt to the growing impacts of climate change. Successful mitigation and adaptation must be based on sound science, with the collective moral values that will drive sustainable solutions. It must be inclusive, it must be equitable, and it must be just, ensuring quality of life for all. We have a moral duty to steward the earth and to steward each other. We're all part of this interconnected ecosystem. Armed with this knowledge, it is now our obligation and responsibility to provide the resources and support to this center. Unfortunately, we have placed these children on the front line and in harm's way. And sadly, they have become our canaries in the coal mine. We must take heed, and we must act now. Thank you for all you do.
I am thrilled to have the privilege of honoring Dr. Luz Towns Miranda. I was introduced to Dr. Towns Miranda by a mutual colleague, Dr. Beatrice Beebe, and I was thrilled to realize how much her work and the work of our center had in common. And we were working in the same space and didn't even know it. Dr. Towns Miranda has a doctorate in clinical psychology and has worked for over 20 years in New York City as a psychoanalyst and a psychotherapist. She has had an enormous impact both here in her community and beyond through her involvement in the Coalition for Hispanic Families, where she provided evaluations and psychotherapy for many of the foster children in the agency's care. She has run a therapeutic nursery, taught family practice residents at Bronx Lebanon Hospital Center, Montefiore Medical Center, and has served on the faculty at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. She's a founding member of the Association of Mental Health Professionals and served as its president. She serves on the New York State Psychology Board and is on the National Board of Directors of the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. Dr. Towns Miranda is both a resident and a community leader here in Washington Heights. She's been an instrumental advocate for mental health and mental health treatment, particularly among local youth in the neighborhood. Her intervention-based approach to treatment and therapy so closely aligns with our core center mission of providing all children a fair start. And I look forward to our continued collaboration together and really look forward to getting to know your work better and hope that we can come together on our joint mission to help all the children in the community and beyond. So thank you.
Good evening. I'm very pleased to be here and honored to receive this award. I have been working in my backyard, which is Washington Heights and Inwood, and a lot of time in the Bronx as well, which is very closely connected and shares many of the same issues that the center's been focused on. But this award I need to share with my family. We moved up here in 1981, and from the get-go got very involved in the community. We felt like this was really home. And so across the street from the hospital is an association of progressive Dominicans that we help fund and that I've been involved in their mental health programs from the time they were eligible to receive their first one. The importance of the work that the center is doing and additionally with a new initiative that they have where they'll be focusing on the emotional well-being of newborns and their mothers is a subject that's one of the most important ones that I've been championing for a long time, which has to do with attachment, which is what our joint friend Dr. Beebe has been working on. And I look forward to continue to be involved in seeing how potentially initiatives in the community can help these mothers that are under such tremendous stress, both economically, psychologically, environmentally, are able to thrive despite all these factors. So I look forward to continuing to work, and thank you.
Brian Lehrer, where are you? Oh, right there. Well, you know his voice, don't you? Because he has hosted the Brian Lehrer Show on WNYC since 1989. It's a daily, as you know, daily 2-hour show featuring interviews with newsmakers and experts about current events, social issues. He's known as a master interviewer on key political, social, and environmental issues. And Time magazine called your program New York City's most thoughtful and informative talk show. And in his show, Brian expertly leads the conversation about what matters now in politics, local and national, in our own communities, and in our lives, with topics such as the health and well-being of children, climate change, and healthcare, with shows titled Children at Risk on the Border, Ask the Mayor, What Do Sugary Drinks and Cigarettes Have in Common? Can you guess? And what does a MAGA hat mean? Which
this week.
Yep. Every day, a major issue tackled with insight and civility. The show won a 2007 Peabody Award for facilitating reasoned conversation about critical issues and opening it up to everyone within earshot. Political guests have ranged nationally from Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton to Mitch McConnell and Kellyanne Conway. You've covered the spectrum.
And now we have to add Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes, yes. And his cultural guests have included Wynton Marsalis, Margaret Atwood, Judd Apatow, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, Yogi Berra, and my husband, Fritz Schwartz. In March 2000, Brian moderated the discussions at our center's conference, Translating Science to Policy, Protecting Children's Environmental Health, and he invited me and the then Surgeon General, David Satcher, to come on his show. And I've also been a guest on his TV program, Brian Lehrer TV, and experienced firsthand his skill at interviewing. And I'll also mention that Brian earned a degree in public health from this school, Columbia Mailman School, in 1989, and he was one of my best students ever. It's true, he was. In the course I taught then on risk assessment. In addition to the Peabody Award, he's won a lot of other things too, including 7 Associated Press New York Broadcasters Best Interviewer Awards since 2000 and Best Talk Show by the Garden State Journalists Association in 2009 and 2011. So Brian, please accept this award from the CCCEH for your incredibly important work to raise awareness and about social and environmental issues that affect the health of children. Thank you, Brian.
Well, thank you, Ricky, for this honor, and it is indeed an honor to be honored by the likes of the CCCEH, truly doing what even an atheist might call God's work, even if they mean it in a secular sense. Some of you who know my radio show may have been surprised to see me listed for this event or in this context at all. You probably think of my work as being about policy and politics, some of the things that Ricky listed. So what gives? Why am I here? Well, this is 2019, so it's the 20th anniversary of the center. 30 years ago, 1989, was a very pivotal year for the world and for me. That's when I was a student in Ricky's risk assessment class. And it was 10 years before the center was founded per se, but people in the school, when I was here, and in the field of environmental health sciences generally, were already noticing that Ricky Pereira at the Columbia School of Public Health, it wasn't even called Mailman yet then, but that Ricky Pereira was doing some innovative work in molecular epidemiology. And of course, 1989 was also when a few little things happened, like the Berlin Wall came down, New York City changed its entire system of government under the leadership of somebody named Fritz Schwartz. And it was the year after Dr. James Hansen from NASA put global warming on the map as a public issue, and people were starting to grapple with the implications. There was not yet a public health course in climate change, only an ecological or atmospheric science one. I'm glad to see that track exists in the school now, but it was a turning point year in many important ways. And it was for me too. I had been a freelance journalist here in New York for most of the 80s, and I was getting increasingly interested in health reporting and environmental reporting and developing them as specialty areas. And I decided I wanted a deeper understanding of the subjects. So in 1987, I started to take a couple of courses here just to learn things, not necessarily for a degree program, but I became interested enough, and it was hard enough to earn a living as a freelance journalist, that I decided to set out on a career path in which I would finish the master's degree and then probably go on for a DRPH and hope to become a journalism professor with specialty in health and environment reporting, and in that scenario, hopefully my publishing in some theoretical tenure track job could be not just academic, but also deep health and environmental journalism. I thought I had it all planned out. So I finished my master's courses that May, 1989. I put together a faculty committee from here and the J School to propose a dissertation topic too that summer. And then lo and behold, in August, I got hired by WNYC to start the show that I've been doing ever since, which meant, among many other things, that I never got the doctorate. I'll die in ABD like so many other people. And I went back to being a generalist, not a health and environment reporter. But here's the thing. What I learned in Ricky's class and in the program here in general has informed every single day of my work at WNYC. I learned how to do rigorous policy analysis, to assess risks of many kinds, not just in environmental health sciences. I learned about the complicated mix of science and politics, the psychology of risk perception, how crises drive policy change, not always in the right direction, while scientists get so frustrated that good science by itself often can't get lawmakers or the public interested. And I try to take that into account in deciding what we do. And I learned that research can be both dispassionate and passionate at the same time, that something like the CCCEH could be born of a burning desire to do something about the savage disparities in health outcomes in our city and our world that sort outrageously by race and class, and then performed well-designed studies that would sort out what was provable from what was theory and use the findings then to try to drive action. And those lessons that I learned here, including very much from Ricky, have informed how I understand almost any area of policy and politics. And I have watched with great admiration from outside as the center was officially founded 10 years later and started accomplishing the things we've all been hearing about tonight. So Ricky and team, congratulations on 20 years, and thank you very much for this honor, which you helped make possible.
That's okay, because you didn't really think you were going to get out of here tonight without getting an award, did you? No, you didn't. So before I begin talking about the future of the center, I think it's really only makes any sense to stop and, as you've heard from pretty much everybody who got up here before me, really acknowledge and honor how we got here. And so, Ricky, on behalf of the center's past, current, future, faculty, staff, and all of us here, we want to honor you and present you with an award for your 20 years of fearless leadership in children's environmental health. Quite done talking about Ricky. We all just want to recognize really that your local, national, and international recognition in this field is just indisputable and speaks for itself. Your energy, both in the office and outside the office, working on scientific reports, testifying before Congress, writing op-eds, serving on boards, is singularly focused on protecting those who are most vulnerable, specifically children. And this energy is contagious. You inspire us to work harder. You're our pace car, and we're sprinting, all of us, every day. And your impact is truly worldwide, whether Poland, China, in our local community, children worldwide have really benefited from your work. You've served as a mentor to many in this room, including myself. Your work has inspired the next generation of molecular epidemiologists, and you've really inspired us to produce the very best science, and science that can be maximally impactful and used to inform policies to protect children, both because they're most vulnerable and, of course, they're our future. So I'm presenting this on behalf of me, my colleagues, probably everyone in this room, with great admiration, appreciation for your fearless leadership, and for being a champion of children's environmental health. So here we are after 20 years. You've heard the expression, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to raise a children's center. I'm here again representing lots of people, over 40 key investigators and staff that work every single day, year after year, to build and sustain the center. And I feel so lucky to be working with such a great group of people. And as a center, I think we all recognize the fact that together we can do much more than any of us would be able to do on our own. And I'm really excited to see what we can accomplish as we move into the future. So if we think what's past is prologue, we are in a really great position to continue our research, and we have a lot to keep us busy probably for the next few decades. So to give you a taste, just a slight taste of where we're going, I wanted to give you a snapshot. You've heard about some of our work from the video and from others. We've worked on chemicals that have been banned or phased out sometimes as a result of our work. But there are new chemicals that haven't been tested and that are out in use. And we can use our existing infrastructure and our data to more efficiently and expeditiously evaluate the safety of these chemicals for children. We all recognize that the effect of chemicals don't work one by one, we're not exposed one by one, and so our center's in a really great position to support the development and the application of new methods to deal with chemical mixtures, and to continue to work closely with our laboratory-based colleagues to understand how those mixtures and chemicals result into changes in biological mechanisms. And as you've heard from Ricky, we want to do work that's impactful. And her new program in translational research will be formalized in a way. We've been doing it for a long time, but this is formalizing that process, and we're thrilled that you're going to take the helm. In addition to communicating with policymakers, we want to make sure to enhance and build on our communication and collaboration with physicians, patients, and the local community to make sure that our research is both accessible and relevant. And finally, we're always looking to improve the training pipeline. I'm a beneficiary of the training pipeline in molecular epidemiology, but we want to continue to provide opportunities for junior investigators and trainees to bring new ideas and to leverage the infrastructure that we've spent so much energy to build and support over the years. So please do stay tuned. In the next 20 years, there's a lot more to come. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Gwen Coleman, who was kind enough to come up from NIEHS to close us out this evening. Dr. Coleman is the Director of the Division of Extramural Research and Training at the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences, which is part of the National Institutes of Health. Before becoming the Division Director, she served as a member of the Susceptibility and Population Health Branch at NIEHS and later became Branch Chief. She's a recipient of too many awards to list, but I'll list a few. 2 NIH Directors Award and the HHS Secretary's Award for Distinguished Service. She's responsible for building the NIEHS grants portfolio in environmental and molecular epidemiology and developed several complex multidisciplinary research programs that include our Children's Center, the Breast Cancer and Environment Research Centers Program, BCERP, where we also have a center here at Columbia, and the Genes, Environment, and Health Initiative. And on a personal level, Dr. Coleman has been an instrumental supporter and really a champion of our Children's Centers program, which supported our work and work at centers like us across the country to prevent disease and promote health among children. We're so happy you could come up, and thank you for being here with us to celebrate tonight.
Well, thank you, Julie, and it's really an honor and a privilege to be here to wish this group of esteemed scientists and staff and community leaders congratulations on all that you've accomplished in this last 20 years. As Julie alluded to, I was there at the beginning, even before there was a program. I worked on the team with the US EPA and others at NIEHS to develop the funding announcement, to develop the program that our institute has to date, not only these children's centers, but also the wider interest in children's environmental health, both in the US and internationally. So back in the late 90s, we were thinking about how to write these funding announcements and put them out. And those of you who are on the faculty know that these become the guidepost of many, many, many hours of work and dedication and efforts to get funded. And we assessed the state of the art at the time. And there was really very little data on exposure levels in children. We didn't know how children got exposed. We didn't know what in their environment impacted them. Everybody just thought kids were little adults. But we took a lot into account to try to craft an opportunity to not only answer critical questions that were out there, but also to have an eye towards community integration, working together across many disciplines. How many disciplines did it take to understand, to develop the field of children's environmental health? It wasn't just environment, it wasn't just epidemiology, it wasn't just pediatrics. It was really everybody working together. And then we put together the first funding announcement, which had a lot of requirements, as many of our funding announcements have. And there was a lot of pushback, and why do you need this kind of person and that kind of person and this kind of research and that kind of research, and where will it get us and how will we do that? So many teams come together, and then there's a rigorous peer review, and then we are able to launch the first of our long-lasting program in 1998. We just put out there some ideas and bullets, and we don't craft what these programs are going to look like. You all do. And I would say this program in particular and the wider Children's Environmental Health Centers program has exceeded every expectation that any of us at the beginning could have. Again, it wasn't really a field, it wasn't a discipline, it was very loosely shaped. And Ricky, you have been, as Julie said, just an amazing leader in trying to formulate what that means, not just for the researchers here at Columbia, but for the general public and for the groups of pediatricians and nurse practitioners and people, psychologists and other people who work with children and trying to understand this. It's just amazing to me after this program was launched to be able to follow it. I was the program administrator for a number of years, and then I handed it off to Kim Gray and others who send their congratulations as well. I got to go on the trip. They got to stay home, but I get to say that they're thinking about you. You know, that fantastic things happen when scientists and community come together. And that was a really integral part of this program and many of the other programs at NIEHS. You know, you start working together, you listen, you hear what the community has to say, what's on their minds. The community gets the benefit of hearing your expertise, and you have to struggle as scientists to put it all in language that everybody can understand. And as trainees and people who are in the research, it really helps all of us understand what we're doing to get away from the technical jargon and really just put it in lay language. And how can you go wrong if what you're trying to do as your most important goal is to better the lives of our children? Our own children, our children's children, the future generations, children in other countries who may have even bigger disadvantages of those of us in the United States. I mean, these deep, strong partnerships really help us understand what's happening in the communities, in the trenches, and really focus our research to answer the most critical questions. So it's been my privilege and honor, and it's been a fantastic experience to get to know leaders like Ricky, Peggy Shepard, Robin Wyatt, Ginny Rao, Dave Evans, and Julie Herbstman. I think you all get it. You know the power of rigorous scientific methods and analysis. They can only be realized to the full impact when you work side by side with those that are most impacted by the unfortunate pollution situations that we have in our society today. You also work very closely with the policymakers. This is not an easy journey. It takes 5, 10, 15 years to show the impacts that you showed on in your video. And for that, we thank you for sticking with it and for creating those relationships and moving the science into policy. So remember, we say this at NIEHS all the time, that doing the research just isn't enough. It's not enough to fill the scientific journals. We can all do that. That's the easy part. The not so easy part is the listening, the teaching, the sharing. Those are the cornerstones for a change, for a better environment. We learn every day, and you know this in your center's work every day, that our health is inexplicably tied to the environment. Every day we read that in the press, and we have more evidence, and we have more buy-in to these issues that we put out there. All of the exposures that were talked about in the video and in everybody's remarks, the chemicals, allergens, air pollution, climate impacts, as I said, they're just not about us, they're about our future. This center is really grounded in those values and those beliefs, and that's what makes the sustained work of your team more important than any one individual experiment. We thought when we started it would be really important for us to learn about the exposome. We now have the word like that, of what the full characteristic of the exposure in early life, to see if at that critical time window it made a difference for somebody's future. The hundreds of publications, the probably 50 to 100 degrees, people who have gotten masters and PhDs from using the data of the center, and those experiences have certainly put us on a path to understanding the really important evidence and doing something with that evidence. So at NIEHS, we have a second version of our strategic plan, and an important set of principles in that strategic plan are taking the research, turning it into data and knowledge, but it's not enough. Turning it into action to make the world a better place is something that the NIEHS is proud to support at this center and in the fully across the country, all the other children's environmental centers. I'll also say that the leadership and scientists in this center have been amazing colleagues and collaborators with our other centers. There have been many joint publications. There have been hundreds of hours of meetings and working groups and conferences that we've all been to. And today, the field of children's environmental health is not just an add-on to some other discipline. It is in itself its own force of nature. And it's because of folks here, Ricky's leadership in particular, working with the other leaders of the Children's Environmental Health Program, that that's a reality today. So personally, I'm very gratified to be part of this program for all these years, and I thank you for your friendship and your leadership and all the years of working together.
Now we can go upstairs and get food and drink and dance. Do we have more to say?
No, I'm done.
No. Okay.
Done. Just please join us upstairs
yes.
to continue our celebration.
Yes. Thank you. Oh, you.